Hello, bonjour et bienvenue à l'atelier Technologie propre mondiale du service des délégués commerciaux du Canada, renforcer le leadership des femmes en technologie propre. Welcome everyone to the TCS Cleantech Global Workshop, Advancing Women Leadership in Clean Tech. I'm Carol Ann with the Delphi Group, and it's my absolute pleasure to be moderating today's event. As Canada moves towards net zero by 2050, the opportunity for growth within Canada's clean tech sector has never been stronger. However, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to bring challenges as well as present opportunities and for Canadian entrepreneurs, but not just Canadian entrepreneurs, Canadian clean tech entrepreneurs and Canadian women clean tech entrepreneurs. To turn confusion into transformation as we start a new year, we need diversity of thought and innovation more than ever. And this means that women have an opportunity to take even more of a leading role in Canada's clean tech future. Before we kick off, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7 in Southern Alberta. These include the Blackfoot First Nation, tribes of the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations tribe of Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley, and the Tsuut'ina First Nations. The city of Calgary is also the homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. I'd like to invite each of you to reflect on the land you're joining from and get flexing that interactivity muscle that we're going to ask you to use again by letting us know in the chat that the more details about where you're from or the place that you feel connected to. We're all together here for about 2 hours. And during this time, we're going to have a mix of different sessions. The first one will be from leading female Canadian entrepreneurs who will share their export stories with us. And they are going to be stories. After that, we are going to discuss access to financing with experts from both the public and private sectors, and also hear from a couple of you in the audience in our Access to Financing Deeper Dive People's panel. Finally, we'll be joined by representatives from 4 different government programs to hear more about the programs and services they offer to jumpstart your success. Throughout the event, I welcome you to share your questions and comments in the chat in either English or French, and we'll get as many of as we can into the discussion throughout the programming. Be sure when you're sending your questions that you select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your questions. I can see that a lot of people are already starting to share where they're coming from. And so thank you for that. Please continue. This is meant to be as interactive as we can. So to begin, I'd like to offer a warm welcome to a very special guest. Bienvenue à l'honorable Marie Ng, ministre de la Petite Entreprise, de la Promotion des Exportations et du Commerce International. Welcome, Minister Mary Ng, Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion, and International Trade. Over to you, Minister.
Well, hi there, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am joining to you from Toronto, from the traditional territory of the peoples of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit River. I want to thank all of the organizers for today's workshop, including our hosts who you just heard from, Dr. Carol Ann Brown and Elizabeth Shirt of the Globe Series, the Trade Commissioner Service, Export Development Canada or EDC, Business Development Canada or BDC, STDC, the Clean Growth Hub, NRC, IRAP, ICED, and NRCan. Boy, that was a mouthful of acronyms. But in each of these organizations, you're going to find so many incredible individuals who are dedicated to helping Canadian businesses excel in every corner of the country, from coast to coast to coast, but also in every corner of the world. So you can truly consider them as your Team Canada. Acronyms aside, I'm really thrilled to be able to join you today to explore opportunities for advancing women in clean tech. Our government has prioritized clean growth as one of the pillars of Canada's recovery from COVID-19 and for our long-term competitiveness. So your industry and you are key to our economic growth. As Grace Kwan, the CEO of Vancouver-based Hydrogen in Motion, a leader in hydrogen storage, said, "Cleantech, in one word, means innovation." With our prioritizing clean, sustainable growth, Cleantech represents enormous opportunity, and we need to ensure that everyone is sharing in that opportunity equitably. This means promoting and supporting opportunities for women and underrepresented entrepreneurs in our most innovative sectors. Diversity drives innovation, strengthens our economy, and creates good jobs for all Canadians. It's fantastic that today's workshop brings together innovative women leaders, but it also offers a one-stop shop for information, resources, and support to take your clean tech and green infrastructure business further. In the last 6 years, Canada's clean tech exports have increased 44%. I think that bears repeating. Exports in clean tech have nearly doubled. Clearly, now more than ever, the world stands to gain from Canada's innovation and leadership in sustainable solutions. Those like Halifax-based Carbon Cure Technologies, whose carbon to value mechanism, to Swamish BC's Carbon Engineering, whose direct air capture technology captures CO2 directly from the atmosphere. Both companies are on the Cleantech Group's 2021 Global Cleantech 100 list, and both have women in the C-suite. Our government knows that in order for clean tech to reach its full potential, women's full economic participation is absolutely essential. This goes for clean tech, but in truth, it must be in every sector. By supporting women's economic advancement, we know that Canada can add up to $150 billion to our economy and $12 trillion in global growth. Yet, according to StatsCan, just under 16% of Canadian small and medium-sized businesses are owned by women, and only 11% of those export today. So I don't need to tell you that women-owned businesses often face barriers to accessing financing, bigger contracts, or networking, as well as the routes to embrace digital trade. It's why our government has introduced what I call Canada's Trade Toolkit, specifically to help entrepreneurs scale up and to connect with international investors, customers, and strategic partners. The Trade Toolkit is built from organizations working together in truly a horizontal way. So this is the BDC, EDC, the Canadian Commercial Corporation, Invest in Canada, the Trade Commissioner Service. This toolkit is part of Team Canada, where there is no wrong door. So no matter which door you go into, you're going to get the support. The Trade Commissioner Service, or TCS as they're called, has 160 offices around the world. They are an incredible Canadian asset, and they have helped countless businesses grow into that international market for the last 125 years. Aside from women-focused trade missions and workshops like the one today, the TCS has also has the women-led Canadian Technology Accelerator, specifically designed to support innovative women entrepreneurs in clean tech, in life sciences, and in digital industries. And if you haven't reached out to them yet, I highly encourage you to do so. Our government's long-term plan for an inclusive, sustainable future goes hand in hand with our plan to invest in the success of women entrepreneurs, like many of you here today. We've added an additional $10 million over 5 years for the TCS's Business Women in International Trade initiative to help women entrepreneurs evaluate their market potential to export. In terms of that market potential, I'm sure that many of you here today will appreciate that Canada comes from a very enviable position of market access to over 60% to the world's economy. I often like to tout that Canada is the only G7 country with a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. It includes the 14 trade agreements in very important economic zones of the world. So here in North America through the new NAFTA, the CPTPP in Asia Pacific, the European Union through CETA, all of these are opening doors to lucrative markets in 51 foreign countries, or as I said earlier, 63% of the world's economy. And what does it really mean for businesses? It means customers. 1.5 million customers through these trade agreements alone. So we are ready to support you as you grow your business and look to expanding into these markets. We've also recently committed $5 billion to Canada's first ever women's entrepreneurship strategy. This is in an effort to help deal with some of those barriers I know that you all are familiar with around getting access to increased financing, to talent, to expertise, to networking opportunities, the mentorship that entrepreneurs and small business owners need. I would also point out, however, that our government's approach to supporting the success of women in business goes further than just direct business investments. While important as they are, we also have included supports for parents through the Canada Child Benefit. Many women entrepreneurs tell me that if you help my family, you're going to help me be successful. Paid parental leave, and our most recent commitment to creating a universal childcare plan. These are more than social policies. These are important economic policies. So I'll end with this. Last January, Cleantech Group released its annual 50 to Watch list, which features 2 Canadian women CEOs, which I always take the opportunity to highlight and to brag, quite candidly. This is a largely Canadian audience, but you can bet that on an international audience, this is always, this is always top of mind for me to feature our terrific Canadian entrepreneurs and business owners and our assets. So Luna Yu, whose company Genetics Bioindustries of Toronto uses bacteria to digest food waste and to turn it into fertilizer and biodegradable plastic resin. And then there is Julie Angus of Victoria-based Open Ocean Robotics, which builds crewless solar-powered boats that can track illegal fishing, map uncharted waters, and detect and clean up oil spills. For Julie, attending events where she's been the only female CEO in the room represents room to grow for women in tech. So all of you. And for Luna, being a women CEO is an advantage because it increases the visibility, and at least for now, it will help women stand out from the rest. And I couldn't agree more. You're unique, you're a dynamic group who not only stand out, but you stand firm with a very, very bright future ahead. And it is my sincere hope that after today, we're going to see even more than all of you who are here today. And I'm thrilled to see the numbers, and I've been watching the chat. So I've been seeing many of you tell me and everyone else where you're all from coast to coast to coast. That's terrific. But I really am continuing to look forward to not only supporting your success and seeing many more women-led clean tech companies just like yours at the top of those lists I just talked about. Merci. Thank you. Good luck. And I wish you all a very, very productive event. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, Minister. And it's so helpful to hear all the things that are going on to support entrepreneurs in so many different ways. And I know in our work in the ecosystem, we know that people struggle to find this information. So I'm sure we can redirect them to the TCS website, to the Government Canada website, because there's lots out there to help people. And so
I would also say that businesses themselves and you and others can actually help us too. This is really a partnership and a collaboration. Governments don't do things on their own. We always get the best when we can partner, when we can collaborate, and when we can bring the businesses to the door. So with that, I'm going to bid you adieu, Carol-Ann, and have a terrific session.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, that was a great start. And now we're going to get you to get even more involved by bringing up a poll. So we have lots of different perspectives here today to touch on lots of different things. And we're asking you to help us focus some of our conversation. Why are you joining us here today? I'm asking you to fill in. You have about 30 seconds to answer. And then we're going to move on to the next of the 4 questions once we see the results for this one. If you're not feeling you're seeing yourself on the questions, you could just skip it. So If that one's done, I don't see the results, but if the results are up, and there you go, there you can see them. Okay, better understand government funding options. That is on the list. Seeking to meet other professionals, please use the chat. Awesome. Exporting and private sector advice are also important. And we're going to have a second question come up. Invite everyone to answer it again. Barriers. What are the barriers you're facing? And these may not incorporate all of them. We accept that. So please answer as best as you can, because that's also really important for us to have a good sense of. All right, a few more seconds to answer, and then the hamsters on the wheels in the background are going to provide us with the answers. Okay, difficulty securing financing is the top barrier, and then making connections, and COVID, as well as the two others. Well, you're in luck. The people here today are going to be answering a number of these. Okay, we have a third question coming up, and that one is more about where you're at on your export journey. Pre-commercial, proven, experienced. All right, a few more seconds. Pre-commercial, great, wonderful, good to get all the information you can up front in order to best plan your journey. And great to see some experienced and export-ready folks here too. Last question. Okay, if you're hoping to export, where do you think your company is going to want to export in the next 5 years as a first place? I'm sure all of us would want to export everywhere as much as possible, but your top priority. A few more seconds to vote. And then we will get our results. North America. Yep, our partner to the south is still one of our biggest targets. We know that. In Europe. That's great. As well as all across. That's fantastic. All right, super helpful. That will help us with focusing some of our conversations today. And so I'm going to jump straight into our Women Exporters in Cleantech storytelling session. So joining us to share their stories today are going to be Karen Schuett, from the co-founder and CEO of Livestock Water Recycling, Amanda Hall, the CEO and founder of Summit Nanotech, and Miriam Turk, co-founder and CEO of Clear Blue Technologies. And so because they have awesome stories to share, we're going to do a format today that's a little bit different than what you might usually see, both virtually as well as in-person events. And that is, we're going to have a series of one-on-one conversations. So I'm going to first talk with Karen, and then I'm going to disappear, and Karen is going to have a chat with Amanda, and Karen will disappear, and Amanda is going to have a chat with Miriam. And finally, we'll come back all together, and then we'll have more of a interactive group discussion. So please don't forget to put questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll try to incorporate them into our conversation as we go. So I'm going to now be asking Karen a question, and it is about your story. Please, can you share with us, what is your expert story, Karen?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Our export story is our entire business story, because beyond our 4 initial pilot tests we did in Canada, we now export all of our revenue. We are active in 10 states in the US, And so while exporting into the US was pretty comfortable for us and pretty accessible for us, the story I thought I'd tell today is about our project that we did in Lebanon, because this was an entirely new market for us. It wasn't what we anticipated to be an active clean tech market. And so at the beginning, we hadn't really anticipated working there. We hadn't done a lot of market research. So we initially were contacted by the largest dairy producer in Lebanon, as they were up against some very difficult trouble with their waste production. And this was an initiative speared on by the UN as well as the World Bank to protect the largest river in Lebanon, the Litani River. This is the largest source of fresh water in Lebanon. And as well, the UN got involved as the fresh water was being used by almost 2 million refugees from Syria who were living alongside the river. When they contacted us on our website, of course, we took this seriously, but we were uncertain whether there would be a future here. We get, people contact us through our website internationally, and we're never really sure about the market or whether we're looking to expand into that area. So this picture here shows how important the Trade Commissioner service was for us at this point. When we got contacted, and as we started moving further into the project, we had to contact our Trade Commissioner service immediately to say, is this a real opportunity? What does this market look like? Who are these people? We don't know anything about this on the ground in Lebanon. And they were absolutely integral in getting us on this site. You can see here in this picture that during COVID, they had to go to the site for us on our behalf. We couldn't travel there, and they did some actual work with our client. We probably have relied on them a little bit more than they wanted us to, but they've been fantastic in helping us. We would not have had the confidence to do this project had they not reassured us that they had vetted the technology. So then just quickly on to the next slide. This kind of shows what the impact of the system has been. We've had impacts beyond just cleaning up the water. Our project partners here in Lebanon have used the water from our system to rehydrate an area that was lost and create cropland. So it changed, some of our vision of working in the Middle East grew as a result of this project. Because now we're looking at putting cropland in the desert. This was not something that we had realized. Now this partner in Lebanon has become a distributor for our products throughout the Middle East. Based on their success, they have tours at their facility to show other partners in the UAE to show how we can impact cropland. So it's been more impactful than we ever even imagined for a single isolated project. I think overall, that's the main bulk of the story. But one thing I would like to touch on is that in this project, as it developed, there was a signing that was to happen with the Prime Minister of Lebanon. We had to go to the location and do this big public signing. I got the impression that I would not be as desirable to attend this signing as my male co-founder. And I made the decision to send my co-founder and one of my male board members to the signing, just as a result of ongoing conversations. So that's just something I just wanted to touch on as a decision that I made.
Yeah, a reality in exporting is how are you interacting with the other country's culture, and what is the best decision to be making for the business. I'm so glad you shared those photos because they're so impactful. So a great story. Someday I hope we get into more details. I would ask you one more question. If you can, answer in a couple of minutes, what is the one piece of advice you would share with the audience based on your experience? Either this one or exporting generally in terms of.
Yeah, so I think I have one big piece and then just a couple little add-ons to that. But my big piece I'm going to say is be bold with respect to exporting. there were lots of people who told me and continue to tell me to think small and grow where you are and take your time in the market and learn your lessons at home. And I would say, while I understand there's, we want to be cautious about how we move forward in our businesses, I never want to think small. And I don't like to take that advice. While I'm saying that, having said that, you want to find great mentors that can help you make that progress and make that leap to the next step. You can get confidence from them. They can encourage you, they can guide you, they can provide networking opportunities. So good mentors is the most important thing I can say to everybody here. And then I'm just going to say, I can't stress enough how important our trade commission is in all the new markets we're working in right now, Indonesia and the UK, and into Europe, in many countries in Europe. I just have to make a shout out, because we would not be doing this without that impact.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm going to disappear, and now you're going to host and ask those questions of Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Amanda, I can't see you. Are you there?
Hi, I am here, but my video won't turn on.
Okay. Oh, there you are.
Oh, there. Hi.
Hi there. Yeah, so I just want to, I know a little bit about your export story, and I'm excited to hear more, because I know you've had some successes that I haven't been able to get yet. So please tell us what your export story is.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, so Summit Nanotech is the name of my company, and I'm a resource extraction expert from the Alberta oil and gas sector. And I've also done some other mining in Canada as well, potash mining. But when I wanted to get involved in the lithium space, I started with inventing a new technology that would extract lithium from the ground using a very sustainable approach. And it's my roots in oil and gas and really understanding the importance of sustainable extraction that allowed me to, what I'm exporting from Canada is my technology, but it's also my knowledge of resource extraction. And so in the world, the best lithium is in South America. It's the low-hanging fruit. They call it the Saudi Arabia of lithium. And so I had to go to Chile. And I was terrified, of course. My first time down there, I showed up at a lithium conference. Not only was I the only female in the room, I was wearing a red dress. So I stood out like a sore thumb. And, I did a lot of listening. I was there for reconnaissance. I listened and I met with as many people as I could. And I was just really genuine about who I was, where I was coming from, and what I was after. And at this point, our technology wasn't commercial. It still isn't commercial, but we're building up to that now. So a lot of reconnaissance while I was down there. But I came back from that meeting down in Chile where I interacted with a lot of mining executives and engineers and plant managers. And one of the things a lithium expert said to me was that no South American miner would ever buy technology from a gringa. And a gringa is a white woman. And so I kind of took that back home and I thought about it. I didn't like it, but I thought, maybe I should hire a man to do our business development down in South America. And I'm in a program called Women in Cleantech. And actually Luna Yu and Julie Angus, who the minister mentioned earlier, are both in this group of women. And there's 6 of us, and the 6 of us are really good friends. And I sat down with them and I said, what do you guys think? Should I hire a man to do my business development in South America? And all of them crossed their arms and said, you need to own this. And what kind of a world do you want to see coming in from our Canadian export? And what kind of a business do you want to run? And so I held my ground and I said, you know what? I'm a female. It's my technology. It's my company. I'm the representative. And so I have been the face of the company in South America from day one. And they are not only accepting our technology, when I come into a meeting, I have a reputation that precedes me saying that I'm not only a gringa, but I'm smart and I know what I'm doing. And so I really love that. And, standing my ground and asking myself, what kind of a future do we want for not only for my Canadian born company, but for my children's companies, Women have to stand our ground and be the ones that represent who we are and what we do. So that's my export story. But where the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service comes into play is that when I was looking for board members on my advisory board, I used the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service to introduce me to top level mining executives in Chile. And I got 2 of them on my board. So 2 of the biggest mining companies in the world, I got VPs and CEOs from those companies on my board. So amazing, amazing opportunity there that would not have happened without the TCS helping me.
Thank you, Amanda. I hadn't thought of that for the Trade Commission connections, but I'm going to use that. I like your story that you wore a red dress. That's very Canadian of you. Good job. Thanks for sharing the part about your fear, because I think we can all relate. I can definitely relate to having that fear, and then just your bravery to just go bold with that. That's wonderful. I would like to again ask what I was asked is about what's the one piece of advice you would like to share with the audience based on your experience?
Yeah, my advice is to listen. Like that's the number one thing you should do. But then always look for the win-win when you're negotiating with or partnering with international customers or partners. Looking for the win-win right out of the gate is so important. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was marketing our product to a US lithium mine. And after one conversation with the CEO of this company, he said, "It's so refreshing talking to someone who isn't out to take our profit away." And he said, he actually said, it's nicer talking to you than all the boy millennials that have been showing up on our doorstep. So he liked that I was female. He liked that I wasn't greedy. Like, don't be greedy. Just go into these relationships looking for a win-win. And I think that's the way to succeed with these international connections.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going to turn it over to you now, Amanda, to take it from here.
Thank you, Karen. And I have the pleasure of interviewing Miriam Turk. Miriam, there you are. Hello. Nice to see you. You're on mute. Just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so glad to see you again today.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
So I'll just move along quickly and ask you your export story to get started.
Yeah, so Clear Blue Technologies is a company that's focusing on wireless off-grid power. The power grid in the world today is predominantly a wired network, and it is going to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years exactly the same way as the telecom infrastructure did. Telecom used to be 100% wired. Today, we have a big part of the network that's wireless and a part of it that is still wired. The power grid is about to do the same evolution, where we're still going to have our power grid for sure, but a massive amount of power and power services, especially for mission critical Internet of Things, is going to be delivered through wireless off-grid power. And we're the first company to have built and developed the technology and also to deliver the service around the world. We have customers in 37 countries around the world, but basically 2 predominant markets. Part of our market is in the US, which over the last 4 or 5 years has been about 60 to 70% of our revenue. But very quickly, Africa is growing in a significant way. We expect to see that go into South America as well. And so those emerging markets are growing. And I think that it's interesting. I do want to tell you that in my early days, I was a sales rep selling to the banking industry in downtown Toronto, Canada. And I once went to a Board of Trade breakfast meeting where I was the only woman in the room. There was 200 people in the room, and I wore a red dress, and I will never forget that. Was a big mistake. I was like red. But customers, especially with newer technologies or businesses, they make the decision to do business in the following steps. Step 1 is, do I want to do business with you? Do I want to be part of your ecosystem? Do I want to have a relationship with you? And step 2 is, okay, now do you have the technology to do the job? It's kind of like, are you an iPhone or an Android person? You know, I don't think people go, well, which one am I going to buy? You kind of, I'm an Apple or I'm an Android, and then you go buy it. So you've decided first who you want to be with, and then you go and you buy the technology. So you have to find that happy balance between being who you are. We are women STEM-led companies, but also making the customer feel comfortable with who they're dealing with. And so the way that we have dealt with that, and we have great diversity in the company, but it's something we have to always continuously work on, and I'm always watching, but we have good diversity, both in female, male, as well as in visible minorities. We have used that as a technique to try to bring comfort to the people that we're doing business with. So there's no question that there are some cultures where they feel less comfortable dealing with women, some cultures where they want to deal with it. And it's really, I think, aside from those extreme people, a question of feeling comfortable with who they're dealing with. So what we try to do is always pair up by showing our diversity. So we're doing business in Brazil. Happened to have 2 Brazilian employees who came from Brazil. We've got someone from South Sudan. We've got someone from Mexico, someone from India. So we've really focused on trying to build our diversity in our company. And then when we go to the customer, we never say, no, the women's not going. We try not to do that unless they're going into a mosque, in which case I have sat in the car while the business meeting happened in the mosque because I couldn't go into the mosque. But we go with someone. So finding local partners and making them feel comfortable with, that part is really our success to the export, and showing the customer that we have the diversity that people understand. I've got someone who's from South Sudan. When I'm doing a rollout in DRC or any part of, the Sahara Africa, we understand what that world looks like because we've got someone who can describe it for us. So that's our big export way we've approached it. And we have found it to be quite successful in most markets, at least in the markets we've done business in.
That's fantastic. I totally agree. Being genuine and really respecting the culture of where you're going is so, so, so important. And your company is killing it. So whatever you say, I'm like, you're doing something right. And so just to wrap up, is there any one tool or approach or advice that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think, and this is where the trade services can also come in and help you. So I think one thing that we've kind of all learned over the last few years, it more so than even before, is we've always understood that we were a different country than the United States. And so we have our own culture, even more so lately. But even though we're so close, so similar, so much in common, we're still very different. And so my biggest piece of advice is be respectful of the local content. We don't want to, in the same way that you say a win-win, you don't want to suck all the business out of the local. If you can buy local as a contribution to what you're doing, and you can push local, help that and find local partners. Because in the same way that some person who's traipsing into Canada from some other market, even though Canada's very global and, internationally focused, they just don't get how things work here. And so finding partners who are on the ground in the countries that you're working with, and it's really hard to find good partners, really hard to find ones that are going to fit with you, but it's a constant struggle, is critical to success. It's even critical to success in the US. We don't have operations in the US, but my salesperson in the US is from Chicago, and she gets that. And we've invested in the market to the extent we can, and we will continue to invest. And we do try to source there if we can, of course, for Buy America. But you don't want to suck 100% of the jobs out of any location, just like we don't want that to happen to us. And so really find the partners locally on the ground, and the trade services can really help with those introductions to understand the culture there. Because if you don't understand the culture, even knowing whether you've won a piece of business or not, we have different scoring of our sales. In Canada, if someone says to me, you'll have you've got the business, you're going to get the PO, I assume it's closed, because that pretty much means it's closed. Doesn't mean it's closed in Africa at all. You could be 2 years before the end of that. So anyways, that's my one piece of advice.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Miriam. And I think I'll pass it off to Carol Ann now.
That's wonderful. Thank you both very much. I'm going to invite Karen to come back, and we have a few minutes to entertain a question or two from our audience, but I'm going to take my privilege and ask you a question of my own. I heard in your stories a lot of how the TCS was really helpful. I was curious if one of you or all of you have used other Government of Canada tools in your export journeys, and if you could just mention what those would be. So Miriam, I'm not sure if you got to use the TCS as much as I heard Karen and Amanda have.
Yeah, I think our first partnership was with EDC.
Yeah.
And so TCS is more new, more under development than EDC, but EDC was very interested in clean tech. And so even though we might not have, we got accepted into the program early with lots of support and lots of help. The number of times I've called them and said, hello, what's an ABC? You start really from the basics. So we've had great support from them, and we've been growing that. We also have Sherry Corbett's going to be on a line a little bit later. We also have a business partnership with BDC in terms of financing. They are great in providing financing. They're also very demanding. Sherry's, I'm always a little bit nervous when I get on the phone with her, but she asks the hardest questions and she makes me better at my job every day. And she sees the problems right away. And so that remote view. So we've had the benefit of EDC was really the first to the table, helped us get a banking relationship. We have banking relationship with Bank of Nova Scotia and a line and credit and LC support. And we're negative cash flow, not profitable, which is, in the old days, you didn't get that with the Canadian banks. Both Scotia and CIBC have changed their approach to the marketplace and are now investing in early stage partnerships with companies and getting the support from EDC to help you get banking services. And I can tell you, we won a large deal just recently, would not have won it if we didn't have that in our back pocket. The customer tested us by saying, could you provide a financial guarantee? Just kind of waiting to see if we could do it. And I said, sure, no problem, we'll do it. And the follow-on orders, they didn't ask for that. So it was just really a test. Do you have the backing you need? That's where we started. And now we're building also through the trade services.
Yeah, great example, because there's a trade service, there's the Business Development Canada, the Bank of Development Canada, Export Development Canada. There's lots of different mechanisms. We'll hear more too on other programs that are helpful. I wanted to bring one of the questions from the audience to bear as well, which I think is, important in lots of different organizations, companies, but maybe even more so in clean tech, given your story, Amanda. The question is, how do we get more women to be on our boards? And for clean tech companies, this might be even more tricky, right? Because it's more niche than just general business. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I went looking for a board, I cast my net wide, and of 12 board members, I got 2 females. So, and Miriam and I both share a board member. So that's one connection I have with her. He's fantastic. But 2 females on my board, I wanted more. I wanted 50-50. And that is something, it's the kind of the difference between equal opportunity versus equal outcome. So equal opportunity being you cast your net wide, you throw your doors open, come one, come all. Equal outcome is I'm going to force a 50-50 solution. I'm going to force a 50-50 outcome. And that's kind of what Justin Trudeau did with the government. He said, we're going to put half women in these seats, and he did it. And I think we just have to really commit to making those promises and sticking to them. And, when that 50-50 by 2030, I think came out, where we all sign up saying we would support equality, I signed wholeheartedly. And that's something that I really push in my company. It doesn't make my male employees very happy necessarily for me to say I'm going to force a 50-50, not only employment pool, but also on the board. But it's something I stand by. It's the way of the future. We're 50% of the population, so we should represent that in our companies as well.
Thank you, Amanda. Karen, do you have thoughts on either of those 2 questions I posed, actually?
I would like to say, as far as government groups that we've worked with that have been helpful. I'd echo the EDC comment, although we didn't use them for our international projects. We didn't end up using them, but we did go through the process with them. They were just helpful in advising overall on how we could do the work. BDC as well, we're always talking to them, and I'll just echo what Miriam says about being a little nervous talking to Sherry. We'll hear from Sherry later, and everyone's going to be nervous, but and then also we've had a tremendous amount of help from Agriculture Alberta and Agriculture Canada in just getting us into trade shows, getting us into events, getting us into meetings with important partners. So all of that, I would echo that. As far as female representation on our board, we've had a real difficult situation with that. We're really trying to encourage that, but we do, just to echo Amanda, we do have a 50-50 female to male breakdown in our staff, and that includes my female welders and my my manufacturing production coordinators. So putting females into the production facility has been a wonderful asset for us.
That's fantastic. So usually when we're having exciting conversations, we run out of time, which is what's happened. And so I want to say to you, merci beaucoup, beaucoup, beaucoup. Thank you so much for your time and your stories and your authenticity. They're so valuable. We shared your websites in the chat earlier, and would encourage people to reach out to you on the chat function or other spaces like LinkedIn, like I've seen on the chat. We're going to give ourselves all a little break. We've been here for almost an hour now, and I would invite you, before we go into our financing panel, and this person, Sherry, who might show up, who's scaring people already, just stand up. And I have a quick challenge for you. I want you to stand up, go somewhere in your room where you are, pick up something, and come back and tell us in the chat what you think it means to you in terms of clean tech. So I will be right back because I have something. And I swear this wasn't staged. As you can tell, I'm in a guest bedroom. This is my office for now. And and I saw this yesterday when I was reading through my notes, and this is my object. And this makes me think the sky is the limit. And absolutely, after hearing the stories of Karen and Amanda and Miriam, and I've got goosebumps, I'll tell you, the sky is the limit. So for clean tech, for women in clean tech, and for exporting clean tech, that's what I'm taking away from my object. And please, if you manage to run to another corner of your space and bring an object, I encourage you in the chat to share what that object means to you and what it represents in relation to clean tech. Because yeah, okay, that's true. So thank you, Miriam, for your note in the chat. Absolutely, Sherry is very supportive, and she's doing her job really, really well by being very rigorous in the process. And so we are being we are joking around a little bit, but it's meant in good fun, because we need those kinds of people on our side. I picked up a vacuum, self-explanatory. That's great. We're going to clean up. We are. You are nice, Sherry. I can vouch for that. I've met you in person. All right. Any other objects you want to share before we dive into access to financing? Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to move on. All right. So given that this is about financing, it's about the numbers, it's about the dollars, I'm going to start off with just a little bit of data. So I like to be on time. I'm actually half a minute ready to go. Oh, lovely. Raw amethyst. Thank you for that. You heard earlier that the minister was sharing that only 16% of organizations, SMEs in Canada, are led by women. of that, only 5% are cleantech SMEs that are led by women. So it's even a smaller number who are in the business of clean tech that are leading SMEs. At the same time, women make up 50% of the Canadian population and yet only receive 4% of the venture capital funding available in Canada. And in the world of venture capital, only 15.2% of partners at Canadian firms are women. So it's not too surprising to see the numbers in terms of those that are understanding and making decisions about financing and those that are receiving. But there's lots of opportunity. You heard from the minister that our clean tech exports have increased, and so we're hopeful that this panel can help us understand how we can so increase the access to financing. What I'm going to do is I am going to be introducing to you our panelists. We're excited to be bringing to you Jill Earthy, the CEO of Women's Enterprise Center, Sarah Applebaum, the partner, Pangea Ventures, so she's one of the 15%. Sophie Dumoulin, the Director of Clean Tech for EDC, and last but not least, our friend Sherry Corbett, Director of the Cleantech Practice, BDC. And so I will invite you all to the screen. Merci, Madame, for joining us today. Hello. So I can see Sarah and Sherry and Sophie, and I just want to check that Jill is with us as well. Jill, can you go off mute and say hello?
I'm here. Okay, I can see myself on video, so I'll just try again.
Yep, you're great. You were on video too. It's just that with the platform, you were in a different part because you weren't speaking, and so that's why I asked you to speak up. Yeah. Thank you so much. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is I have a question that is going to be a bit of a lightning round for all of you. And then we're going to dig in a bit more into some of the topic. So for each of you, I want to ask, what does the audience need to know about you? And maybe I will go with the alphabetical order, which is easiest, and go with Sarah first.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here. My name is Sarah Applebaum, and Caroline, as you mentioned, I'm a partner with Pangea Ventures. At Pangea, we invest in hard tech companies. These are companies that are leveraging advancements in material science, chemistry, biology, or physics to help solve some of the world's most fundamental challenges. As it relates to the conversation today, clean tech, climate tech, carbon utilization, food systems, and agriculture are all areas of interest for us. And we focus on commercial stage companies. So we partner with entrepreneurs that have launched their first commercial product in the market with customers, and we invest in Canada and the US.
Wonderful, super helpful, thank you. Sherry, what do you do at BDC?
Hello, yes, Sherry Corbett from BDC. I am nice, I ask a lot from my clients. I want more out of them, I want them to do very well, and I think that came across, so I'll leave it at that. So yes, I work for BDC. BDC is the Business Development Bank of Canada. It's a very large bank. It has lots of different areas to help Canadian entrepreneurs, from startup loans all the way to larger financings. I'll be chatting from the Cleantech Practice perspective today. The Cleantech Practice specifically, we're a $600 million fund, so a very large venture style fund. We invest in clean tech ventures. They have to be Canadian, they need to be IP rich, have a new and novel clean tech venture. We invest larger check sizes, so 5 to 20 million is typically where we play. And for companies at that commercialization stage. So think TRL 9, so they have their technology proven and we're helping them. They're usually not pre-revenue, but early revenue, and we help them commercialize. That's our sweet spot. So that's me, thanks.
Thank you so much. All right, and Sophie Dumoulin.
Hi, good afternoon. So I am the director of the Cleantech program at EDC. So the team is a business development team primarily responsible for handling the relationship with our portfolio of customers in the industry. Last year, EDC recorded records support for the Cleantech. So the first time the amount of trade we supported through our solution for the customers exceeded 4 billion. So we were extremely pleased with that. So that did set even higher targets for this year, but we're ready to go, and we were very pleased to see that. In terms of EDC itself, so we also have an equity program for earlier stage, but they do need a certain level of continuous revenue, maybe roughly around the $1 million mark. And then maybe what's more different is we have our credit insurance program that's been around for a very, very long time, but we also have working capital solutions. So both in the bonding front, and that's the program I was previously responsible for. So I have a very strong expertise on the bonding. We have also bank guarantees, direct lending, and then we have project finance, which does apply at a bit of a later stage in the type of companies in Cleantech who may require a very large amount of capital for building a plant in Canada, for example, their first commercial plant. We have different support available there, but that's maybe just in a nutshell what we can do for the ecosystem.
So could you give sort of like bookends on the project financing? Like what's the minimum, maximum if you have some?
Yeah, so on the project financing, as you may have heard, in 2017, we were allocated an envelope of budget from the federal government. And this is meant to cover first of a kind, like the first commercial plant, a bit riskier type of project finance that EDC may not have normally done under its normal balance sheet. And under that envelope, I would say, is there truly a minimum? I'm not sure, but let's say we're going to look at probably 10 to 15 million in the low end, but the envelope is for 450 million in total, and there are projects in that pipeline listed at 100, 200, even 300 million. So there's not necessarily a limit in terms of size, but on the low end, maybe the 10, 15 million mark is what we're looking at.
Yeah, thank you. Super helpful. I'm just trying to line up where you all might fit within some plans. So thank you. And Jill, definitely not least in terms of last of your 1 minute.
Yeah, so great to be here and so inspired by this panel, but also the speakers we just heard before us. So I'm on the other end of the continuum, and my sort of background too has been continually looking at alternative forms of financing for entrepreneurs and each step along the way to increase access, particularly for women and other underrepresented groups. And right now, so I've done that in fintech companies. I've done that with other early stage loan opportunities, and also around, as you mentioned, Caroline, the stats around not enough women making investment decisions. So also some work around that I'm really passionate about too. But right now I'm serving in the role of CEO of the Women's Enterprise Center. So we're a federally funded nonprofit organization based in BC, but we have sister organizations and the other Western Canadian provinces. And we provide financing up to $150,000. So smaller, but I think that's so critical because we do see, not necessarily, we do see some clean tech companies, but it's about every step along the way and how different pieces of capital play a role in the whole funding continuum. And so I think we really need to look at it as a whole process. I also serve on the boards of the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, the Women's Enterprise Organizations of Canada, so have a knowledge of the different supports and resources for women entrepreneurs across the country, and also on the board of Sustainable Development Technology Canada, which of course is a national clean tech fund that has both a seed fund that was just launched at the end of 2019, but also of course a much larger envelope of funding to really help those clean tech companies move along, but plays a critical role in the ecosystem, right? Partnering with EDC, partnering with VDC, partnering with other sources of funding. So it really is a collaborative ecosystem. And I know Zoe's on the next panel, so we'll hear from her more about SDTC. But great to be here.
Thank you so much. So that gives us a great picture of all of your roles in financing, which leads me to ask you, can you give some specific examples of successes as well as gaps that you see in the ecosystem as it comes to financing, right? So what I've heard covers a lot of things. Does it cover it all? So I would welcome whichever one of you want to put up your hand to answer that. Go for it.
I'll kick it off. So, we have 35 investments, companies that we invest, that our fund has invested in, and we do both debt and equity investments. And of those 35, we only have 2 that have female CEOs. So Miriam, who you spoke with, who chatted just before, and then also Jody Morgan from Green Mantra. And, this is not for lack of trying. I think something that I'm personally really invested in is trying to get more women-led, and I'm just talking at the CEO level here, but women-led businesses into our fund. My boss, the VP of our fund, Susan Rohack, is also a female, and her and I, we're trying. Like, it's not for lack of trying, but it's difficult. And most of the women-led ventures I found are just too small for us. So they're still a little bit too earlier stage. They're looking for smaller check sizes of funding. They're growing, and I would take Miriam out of this because she always shoots for the stars. She's very motivated that way. But many of the women-led ventures, they are typically more conservative in their forecasting. They don't want to take on as much debt, and so because of that, because of our fund and our specific criteria, it is harder for us to get deals done with them. And so, maybe that is a gap in the marketplace. Maybe, maybe if there's more money, out there for funds like us, or if at some point we get given more money, we could have it focused on, earlier stage ventures with, a specific criteria focused on getting more women ventures in there. I would love to see that, but currently we need larger opportunities to fit our criteria.
Okay.
I'd love to chime in there if that's all right. Yeah, Sherry, I completely hear what you're saying. And I think what we're finding now is we are able to acknowledge and identify some of the unique paths that women entrepreneurs take. And you're absolutely right. I mean, starting off with motivation, right? Usually more women start businesses because of impact versus dollars right out of the gate. There's lots of research that shows that women are risk adverse. I don't like that term. I prefer the term risk astute, where women are a little bit more, and these are generalizations, but backed by data, a bit more methodical in their approach, want to do the research, want to understand the risks, and therefore are going to take less capital at each stage along the way. But the outcomes now we're seeing are quite powerful, right? It's a longer growth trajectory, different types of financing needed at different stages. But I think we're now seeing the returns at the end. Actually, they're more likely to be in business after 5 years. They're more likely to provide a return on investment. In fact, 2 times some data shows as dollars invested in male-led companies. So I think we're starting to see a shift and starting to see some new models emerge, but there's definitely an opportunity to fill some of those gaps.
Thank you. Sarah, yeah, Sophie, if you guys want to jump in.
Yes, so maybe a couple elements we've seen in the market. We're still working on hopefully seeing a higher risk appetite on the banking side in general for the clean tech sector. We have many of our guarantee solutions that are issued through the banks and in partnership where we risk share the structures. And often especially last year, maybe we had a harder time finding the appetite for even 20-30% of the risk, from the bank side. So we're really working hard on that to hopefully see a bit more of market appetite so we can deploy more of our guarantees in the market. That's definitely one we've seen and we understand. And then a strong need for introductions and connection. Especially from the strategics. I think it's a common topic, but definitely that when we see in the news those agreements that have been made or partnerships, like we always very much celebrate them and highlight them as success stories. We really hope to connect more of our large Canadian companies through the earlier stage clean tech companies and see some of those partnerships being created. And in terms of success story, I just wanted to share maybe kudos to SDTC. I was on a call this week with an investment banking firm in Washington and comparing the U.S. System and what XM is doing in EDC, and we were exchanging in terms of the clean tech support we offer. And they specifically mentioned how lucky we were in Canada to have an organization like SDTC to provide the funding earlier stage and support the project. So maybe kudos to all that work that's being done. And as BDC and with BDC and SDTC, we have this joint account management sort of system framework where we see companies come in through the pipeline, and it often starts with SDTC. So definitely a strong success stories of our Canadian ecosystem.
For sure. Sarah.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. And Sophie, I'm so glad you brought up sort of lending and access to debt finance, because that's a really big part for growing early stage companies as well. But we, Caroline, you asked what's working, and I think the non-dilutive funding piece, especially in recent years around clean tech, is really blossoming. Jill with the SDTC Seed Fund, NRC IRAP, MyTax, and resources like the Clean Growth Hub is really that center for non-dilutive funding is huge. And we're seeing a lot of companies, whether they're female-led or not, getting further with research dollars, non-dilutive funding before they come talk to groups that look like our fund. I think one of the gaps, though, that still exists, and we maybe touched on it a little bit earlier, is the lack of female role models, mentors who are at the senior levels of leading clean tech companies, whether it's in Canada or internationally, to really, help mentor and inspire that next generation of emerging entrepreneurs. And that's something that, we're really passionate about at Pangea and love to, help to continue to support efforts like that.
Yeah, well, thank you for all your time doing that today too, everyone. Thank you for that. We're gonna switch format a little bit. We're gonna keep our panel here, but if you remember when you signed up for the session, you had the chance to ask questions. We got lots of great questions. We can only pick two. So I'm gonna invite to our People's Panelists section of the programming to come up. And our first one is Grace Kwan, who you heard the minister speak about earlier, the CEO of Hydrogen in Motion. Grace, if you could turn your video on, I'm gonna let you ask the panel your question.
Hi, thank you for the panelists for doing all your great work. And this is a women in clean tech specific discussion, so I'm going to ask a women specific question. Just like the glass ceiling for senior level positions have been in place and have been addressed with employment equity targets and actual metrics to get women up into these positions, financing is sort of the next glass ceiling for female entrepreneurs. The questions that are asked to male entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs are different in nature and tone. And this has been my own experience, but I've also been part of pools and I've seen that with my own eyes. So, I mean, that's anecdotal, but you have the statistics on who gets financed, and that women organizations have a lower probability of success. So my question to this panel is, what actual measures are you taking to incorporate employment equity and diversity into your program, into your actual programming, not just women-led funds, but your day-to-day program? How are you facilitating women entrepreneurship in your organization?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and answer that first from the Pangea perspective. And Grace, thank you so much for the question. It's such an important one and touches on a lot of issues. So at Pangea, we don't have a specific program or requirement to fund a proportion of female-led businesses or businesses that have women in the management team. But this is something we've been actively tracking in our portfolio for the last couple of years. We measure it because we believe it truly matters. And over half of our portfolio companies have women in senior leadership roles. We don't think that's enough. So we take board seats on all of our companies and actively work with management to help bring diversity into all of our companies. That does take time. But we also look inwardly at ourselves and our team, and late last year made some changes to our own organizational structure. And I'm really proud to share today that Pangaea as a partnership, 50% of our investment partners are female, and we have 50% women on our team at all levels of the organization. And so that's something that we're really excited about, really proud about, and we hope that that helps us make better and more diverse investment decisions on a go-forward basis.
Please go ahead, Jerry. Yep.
I'll jump in. So, I did already note that, we don't have a ton of, and again, I was just talking CEO level. We certainly have lots of senior women in many of our companies, but BDC more broadly has a number of really great initiatives for women entrepreneurs. So they have, specific targets at the financing level for women-led startups, and, lots of ecosystem development and all that sort of thing, and relationships and partnerships with other women organizations across the country to try to get financing to women-led businesses. And we also have the Women in Tech Venture Fund. And so that is specifically targeted at women-led businesses that are in that C-suite. Doesn't always need to be the CEO, but in that C-suite, and specifically ensuring that those women-led ventures are getting funding. So from a more broad perspective, BDC is definitely there. Cleantech, within my fund, we don't have set criteria, but again, a focus of mine and the VP Susan Rohack is to try to get more women-led businesses. And something that I do specifically in all my portfolio companies is I try to get more diversity at the board level. So, when we do invest as equity, we often do take a board seat. It's usually me, so I just naturally help with that. But then more broadly, if they are bringing in independents, I'm doing it with one of our companies right now. I'm specifically searching for more diversity on the board. So that's something that trying to bring in, because it's been demonstrated that helps companies grow and do better, right? Lots of faces that don't look like yours around the table. So that's something that we're working towards.
I was just going to add, it is very much a multi-pronged approach, right? It's around actively seeking out the women, but it's also looking at, the language, the investment criteria. It's also looking at recognizing that women do have unique paths. And so how do we redefine what growth looks like, what success looks like, because there are different paths, right? And it's not just women. I think the other piece now that's shifting is we are moving beyond just gender diversity, which is so powerful, right? And looking at other underrepresented founders, and that's going to help to shift things entirely as well. But it's the language, it's the structure, and it's not just the marketing of these opportunities, right? It's also actually changing maybe policy shifts within organizations. And we're seeing some financial institutions starting to consider that a little bit, but that's going to be a next critical step. So.
Awesome. Sophie, did you
maybe I can I can just add briefly that we did launch about 2 years ago a Woman in Trade initiative out of our equity group. So basically setting aside a specific amount of capital. It was originally set at 50 million for investment. We can do actually much smaller ticket size investments, like in the 500,000, a million, 2 million range. We do quite a few of those as well. So that specific fund was going up to 5 million. In ticket size, and then given the success of it and the number of applicants and funding that was done, it was increased, doubled up to 100 million last year. So it's still going, and it's been a very good success for us so far. It's not exclusively for Cleantech, but we do have obviously some Cleantech investment in that portfolio. So we're hoping to see more of your companies come up and see if they qualify for that program.
Thank you so much. Yeah, great question, Grace. And what I'm taking from this is it's still a work in progress, but we're seeing progress. So hopefully we can continue to see more. I'm going to switch now to our next People's Panelist, and that is Madison Zavala from the Chief of Staff from Carbon Upcycling Technologies. Madison, if we can have you come up on the screen, and I'll let you ask the question of our panel.
Great. Yes, that was an awesome last question. And thank you to all the panelists for sharing your experiences during this wonderful event. So appropriate financing and business models can be as fundamental to success as technology or even customers. So my question is, do you have advice for accessing funding or developing business models that could better support the needs of women in clean tech ventures?
Who wants to take that one?
I can jump in again. You know, I think a very strong business model, in particular, a really strong, forecasting model is very, very important when you're going to look for financing and for funding. And that truly is, whether you're kind of early stage startup, maybe you don't have a top line revenue, but you have your expenses, clearly mapped out, the time frame that you need them, what you actually need in which quarter, and and how that all flows through. The more professional you can be, the more likely you are going to be successful in getting financing, right? So, reach out to your, local CA or accounting firm, or BDC has a consulting practice as well. You can look at them. There's lots of options out there to try to get support, but I would say building a good, strong business model. And again, don't be too conservative, right? Like all of your male counterparts, I've seen it, they will shoot, much, much higher than you. So you want to be realistic, like it's going to be a hockey stick, but also don't be too conservative and be realistic. So my advice.
Just to add to Sherry's answer, like I think that's really good. And in addition to kind of don't be shy and be realistic, but also don't be shy to ask for more than you think you could get, right? Because that's something we see is that there's maybe sometimes a reputation women will hesitate to take risk compared to men, and how we frame it is it's not necessarily that they're more risk adverse, it's they just like to understand risk differently. Like often they're maybe a bit more careful in truly wanting the full picture before they can make a decision, and not wanting to take too much debt or not wanting, but go for it, ask for more. You may get less, but that's maybe a confidence thing as well. But like don't be shy and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think in to build on both of those points, it's also being honest with yourself about what the capital needs of your business are. What are your goals and objectives as an entrepreneur, and matching that with the types of groups that you approach. If you're looking to build, a regional business in your hometown or in your province, and you're thinking, if I'm wildly successful, this could be, $3 to $5 million a year business. You're not coming to talk to me. We're investing in companies that can be $100 million plus revenue businesses within 5 years and are looking to scale globally. And so it's just doing your homework and pairing the capital that you need, whether it's equity, debt, grant funding, or other types of sources, with what's most appropriate for your business.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that too. It's really understanding, making sure that your growth expectations are aligned with those of any funder that you work with. And it is a partnership, right? I think that's the other thing, is it really is a long-term partnership, whether it's debt that you access, whether it's bringing on equity investors, but mapping that out. And as Sherry said, and having that funding plan and pathway, and looking at the different types of capital and how they fit together. I think that's the other thing. I often reference it as a financing puzzle. It's looking at the different pieces at the stage that you're at, where you want to go, and how those different resources and pieces can fit together. That will really help you along the way. So.
I have done it. I have done the speaking without turning off my mute button. I apologize. This is the one thing you should not do as being the moderator. Great pieces of advice. And I obviously, so much to dig into in terms of everyone's specific model and case and story and opportunity. I do want to take one question from the public, because I feel like I've got all the privilege of asking questions. I saw a number of questions that were really around what our next set of presenters are going to do, which is where do you target your ask when you're looking for X funding for this particular this particular kind of project and technology. and stage. So I'm kind of scrolling through the chat right now to see if there's something that's more, oh, it is interesting. So I will ask this question knowing that it's not necessarily for Sarah because it's service-led, but a lot of times when we talk about clean tech, we think technology, we think something hard tech, something we put somewhere, and maybe enabling tech, some digital tech that goes along with that. What about services? Are there funding opportunities for service-based women-led businesses? And I'll ask, is it relevant to clean tech as well?
I think it is relevant. I think it is about building that pipeline too, right? Service-based businesses are slightly different funding needs. It's not as much capital sometimes up front because you're not buying equipment or investing in technology necessarily, right? Depends on what it is. So I think there absolutely are funding available, but it's understanding, yeah, it's all about the business model. And what it goes back to that, as Sherry said, and building that out and looking at the forecasting and what your needs are going to be. And there is funding. I feel like we're very lucky in Canada. We have a lot of great resources for entrepreneurs. And sometimes it's a question of research, and sometimes it's a question of asking for help, asking colleagues to find the right type of financing. And as I said before, how it fits together.
Okay. Anyone else want to answer that one?
Yeah, again, going back to the breadth of BDC, so the main sort of financing arm of a BDC, it's, debt financing, but there's lots and lots of options available from early stage businesses to ones that are growing slowly, fast, whatever it may be. So that for a more traditional services type business that, similar to Sarah, again, I'm talking for the most part from my specific Cleantech Practice hat, where we're looking for 100 million plus, revenue businesses in the medium term that can scale and grow, and that kind of venture, hockey stick. That's what we're focused on. But there's lots of other options for more traditional type businesses, and BDC is really, really good at that in the financing arm. And if you refer to the BDC website, it should really help you for sure.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, with that, unless Sophie or Sarah want to jump in, give you a second.
No, nothing else. Well, yeah. And I'll make it very quick. Similar, like most of our programs, they don't necessarily differentiate per se in eligibility between service businesses and other businesses. It's just going to be the due diligence and the questions that may differ, but lots of support available for these types of companies as well.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, if you can believe it, that is the end of this segment of the program. I wish we could just keep talking, but I also want to hear from our next group of experts. And so merci énormément. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. And thank you to our people panelists, because it's always great to hear from other people what the questions could be. I'm going to transition us into our next segment, where we will be talking about government programs and services. But I'm also cognizant that we've all been sitting here for over an hour and 20 minutes. So if any of you need to get up, go get some coffee, have a stretch, you have a couple of minutes. I would continue to encourage people to share what they're doing in the chat. If you didn't know, and I don't always manage to do this myself, but you can actually save the chat. So you don't have to be furiously scribbling down, oh, that's really interesting, that person just shared their LinkedIn, or, oh, I really want to go look at that website. You can go over to your chat, and at the very bottom where you would write something in, there's a button that says more. There's like three little dots, and there is the save chat. And so you can download all this great information that's being shared without having to write it down yourself. So I will give you one more minute to come back and get ready for our next session on government programs and services spotlight. Yes, great question. Will the recording of this storytelling be available? It will be. It will be on the Globe Series YouTube. And I think that link will be shared at the end, but but my colleagues who are operating the system can let you know where you can find the recording at the end. Okay. All right. With that, we will move on to our final segment of our program, and that is Government Programs and Services Spotlight. So we're lucky to have joining us today a number of people who represent some of the organizations you've already heard about. So they are Gemma Irwin, from the manager at the Clean Growth Hub, Zoe Kolbach, the Vice President of Partnerships and Ecosystem from SDTC, who you also have heard about, Nigel Neal, the Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner with the TCS, our wonderful sponsors for this workshop, as well as Jing Yu, the Industrial Technology Advisor, lead for IRAP, National Cleantech Sector Team. And so they all occupy what we call the spectrum of the technology readiness level continuum. I know that you're hearing a lot of what I call alphabet soup, right? You got lots of different organizations who have different roles and coordinate with other organizations in how to advance our clean tech development and our clean tech ventures. And so we're going to give you a slide that's going to help sort of clarify where the organizations are along the spectrum of developing technology. You know, there are similar spectrums around commercial development as well, and it gets complicated when we start trying to add the two together. So we're just going to focus on what we call the TRL for today. But I'd like to start by welcoming our first presenter, Gemma Irwin of the Clean Growth Hub. And Gemma, I am going to disappear and leave it to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I hope everyone can hear me. So you can see on the slide there where the Clean Growth Hub fits. I just want to say, first of all, thanks for organizing this event. It's terrific, and I'm super happy to be here today among such great company. It's really not that often that we get to speak to a group of women leaders, and that where we're all in the majority, which is amazing. What a year we've had. A global pandemic, an economic downturn, struggling businesses, and women, including women entrepreneurs specifically, being impacted disproportionately throughout all of this. COVID-19 is rolling back many of the gains Canadian women have fought for and won. And I'm not going to talk too much about all of this, but what I want to say is, you know, we are balancing family obligations, career obligations. There's so much that we balance as women. And I was one of those fortunate ones. You know, I was on maternity leave when during most of the pandemic, and recently came back to work. But what I've noticed is since coming back, there's this shift that's happened. I've been in government for over 15 years, and what I'm seeing now is a pivotal moment where economic, climate, and diversity goals are really colliding in a way that we haven't seen before, or at least I haven't seen before. Earlier this afternoon, we heard Minister Ng speak about Canada's economic recovery, the importance of sustainability in that, and the role of trade and exports. But what's unique in all of these government priorities are the commitments to gender equality, reconciliation, fighting discrimination, and all of that underpins Canada's economic recovery. So what I think the important point is, we can't fully recover if we don't bring women and diverse groups along, and we can't grow the economy without protecting the environment. Now, most of you here today know that. You're all leaders in your own right in clean tech and in this space. So I'm not here to tell you what you already know, but what I do want to just cover quickly are a few key services that we offer here at the Clean Growth Hub. So you can see our website and our email is there if you want to get in touch with us. Now, what the hub was designed to do when it was launched in 2018 is to be a whole of government focal point for clean technology. So that means helping developers and adopters navigate this crazy federal ecosystem of supports and services that as I was reading some of the chat, people were commenting that, like, is there one place we can go to? So the Trade Commissioner Service is a great place. They're a one-stop shop. The hub, the Clean Growth Hub, is a one-stop shop, and we actually work together. So we have a trade commissioner embedded in the hub. We work very closely with TCS. That's why we're here today. The other element is that the model of the Clean Growth Hub is really unique in that we have 16 federal departments and agencies that are members. So you already heard from EDC and BDC. You're going to hear from STTC and NRC a little bit later. I know that was a lot of acronyms. So they're all members of the hub. I'm personally with Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. I'm one of 2 co-leads in the hub with Natural Resources Canada. And we work with all different departments like environment and climate change, fisheries and oceans, agriculture and agri-food. I heard that there were some ag tech companies here today. So those departments offer sector-specific programs. And then we also even partner with Indigenous Services Canada for a company maybe that's working on projects that intersect with Indigenous communities. So we'll move to the next slide. So the hub works with pretty much the whole gamut of companies, where you heard from BDC and EDC the specifics of the kind of company that they're looking for to fund. The hub does not provide funding, but we're here to guide you to where those programs are at the federal level, to help the companies or you find those programs. And we work with all sizes of businesses. So small, startup, pre-commercial, to large, multinational. So really the whole spectrum. And we'll just move to the next slide. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I want to have my colleagues share what their programs are doing. But before we do that, I just want to mention a couple key initiatives that are aiming to increase gender equality that the federal government is working on or partnering with. So the first is the 50-30 challenge. This is an initiative that Canadian organizations can commit to increase gender parity by 50% and increase representation of diverse groups by 30% on Canadian boards and senior management. So if you're here today and your company has not signed on to the challenge, I personally encourage you to do so. The list of companies that have signed on is public. Actually, I answered a question on the chat earlier. There's a list that tells you that I think there's 675 organizations already signed on. And so this encourages others to join and encourages others to be bold. And on that note, I do want to give a little special shout out to Amanda Hall from Summit Nanotech and Jill Earthy, because both of you have already committed to the challenge. So thank you for signing up. And then the next initiative I want to talk about quickly is the Equal by 30 campaign. So the goal there is to increase gender parity in the global energy transition. So this is a little bit more specific to what we're talking today, whereas the 50-30 challenge is broad, it's any organization. So Equal by 30, and all of these like to use 30, the campaign asks public and private sector organizations to work towards equal pay, equal leadership, and equal opportunities for women in the clean energy sector by 2030. And the one thing I want to share about them is that what's unique is they've developed a reporting framework to help organizations measure their progress on gender equality commitments and create a really much needed baseline of gender disaggregated data for the energy sector. So we heard a few statistics throughout today already. And I don't have a lot of many more to share. So preliminary results of this reporting framework will be released next month in honor of International Women's Day on March 8th. So I think this is really crucial to moving the yardstick towards gender parity. And then the third initiative that I want to mention quickly is the Women in Cleantech Challenge. Now it's currently closed, but I mention it because it's important in supporting the creation of 6 clean tech companies founded and run by women. So actually, we've already heard from her, but Amanda Hall of Summit Nanotech is one of the 6 finalists. And what I understand from this program is that since becoming finalists, all these 6 women and their businesses have received advice, financial and technical support, and have been working with both Mars and federal labs. So at the end of the challenge, the venture that has advanced the most and is judged most likely to succeed commercially will be awarded a $1 million grand prize. Now, 1 million can be a lot to some companies. It could be a drop in the bucket to others. But the important thing here is that women are a powerful force in Canada's innovation economy. That is just, it's undeniable. But we're significantly underrepresented in the area of clean tech. So every little bit does count and help. So I will close, but so we'll move to the next slide. So if you think your clean tech project or your company is ready to work with the Clean Growth Hub, we're here to help. Get in touch with us. Our website's there. I encourage you to sign up for a newsletter because we regularly post information on new funding programs as they come online, because I know none of you have time to go and search 50 different government websites. Come to ours. We send out a quarterly newsletter. Sometimes we send out interim little blasts. And so make sure that you follow through and give us your consent to contact you directly so that we can get the message out to you about anything that's coming online at the federal level soon. And with that, thank you. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thanks so much, Gemma. That's super helpful. And we are Delphi and Globe members of Equal by 30. And I encourage people to look at these kinds of challenges because it does make you think hard about what your practices are and what you could reach for. And so thanks so much for that. And with that, I am going to move on and invite Qing Yu, the Industrial Technology Advisor, lead of IRAP National Clean Tech Sector Team, to present on what they're doing, because they're a key part of the early puzzle of clean tech development. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here to be with the women entrepreneurs, technologists, and business people. So I'm an industrial technology advisor at NRC IRAP. I'm based in Vancouver. And NRC IRAP is Government of Canada's premier vehicle to support small and medium-sized companies to conduct research and development and innovation and commercialization of their technologies in the global marketplace. So NRC IRAP, we have a very, very strong workforce called Industrial Technology Advisor. They are our main mechanism to deliver technology advice, business advice to SMEs, and they also provide innovations support and financial assistance to the SMEs. So our financial support for the companies includes from pre-R&D market research to research and development on particular product development, a new process development or new service development, all the way to technology piloting and demonstration. So we also have financial support for companies that conduct international research and collaborative R&D and adaptation of technologies. On the clean tech front, we have recently pioneered or developed new funding mechanisms to support companies to pilot their technologies in the international market. We created a so-called program called Fast Pilot in foreign markets. So where we support clean tech companies to do a pilot or a small demonstration in customer sites in a foreign country. So we started this program with supporting the water technology firms, and we have now expanded it to cover clean tech firms across the board. As an offshoot of this program, we are also trying to implement the technology demonstration domestically. So we have partnered with the BC government and created so-called BC Fast Pilot, which is very, very popular since the launch 2 years ago. So we help companies to demonstrate their technologies on customer site. So on the international front, we have very close collaboration with Global Affairs Canada. IRAP runs R&D support programs in collaboration with Eureka and some other European joint R&D mechanisms. So in order to help our companies expand globally, we provide funding for them to work with European partner companies to develop system solutions or joint R&D projects or adaptation projects so that they could open up opportunities in the European market. We also have worked with Global Affairs Canada, and we work on the Canadian International Innovation Program, which is also a R&D support program for joint R&D with companies in emerging markets such as China, Brazil, Korea, and Israel. So that's on the international front. And in terms of our, apart from the financing and the financial support, IRAP also provides a lot of business and technical advices. We provide linkages to other research, universities, federal labs, and other R&D companies. We also provide linkages to the, innovations accelerators and other support organizations. So IRAP is a great resource for technology entrepreneurs to embark on this very exciting journey. Yeah.
It does. Yeah, there's more things you support than time to explain them. Xie for all of that. And now I'm going to jump over to Zoe, who is the Vice President of Partnerships and Ecosystem, to share what SDTC does within this Alphabet Super Support. Hi, Zoe. Good to see you.
Nice to see you too, Carolyn. It's great to be here, and I really feel fortunate to be part of today's discussion. As Carolyn mentioned, I have the privilege of leading the ecosystem partnerships and ecosystem development team at SDTC. And I also have my side hustle, which is quite a bit of fun. I'm raising 3 future female CEOs, is what I like to tell myself. And they really drive the passion for the work that I do. That's if I survive the teenage years, which are quickly approaching. But I'm here today to talk about my day job, which is the amazing work that I get to do with our clients. And it was great to hear Amanda talk earlier, who was one of our early seed fund companies to come into our new seed fund program, as well as to hear Jill talk about the work that she's doing. She's a great advisor for us in our board of directors. And we too have lots of interest in that 50-30 challenge as well. And I can also see as I look into the virtual room, which is always tough because I like to see people. So staring into this black box is a bit awkward, but I can see many women leaders from the companies that we work with. I think I saw Aspire in the crowd and many others. And so for those of you who are not familiar with the work I do, it's like they knew I was going to say this. Check out our website. There's a how to apply section. It talks about there's, any email that you send goes to a human and someone will call you back or redirect your email so you're in touch with the right person. But I'll give you a quick virtual pitch about the work that we do. So we fund companies. So you come to us with a project that you want to develop. So an innovative technology solution. We do a lot of data-enabled clean technology. So about 40% of our portfolio is data-enabled clean tech. And we work with entrepreneurs at every stage of their growth. So this is a transition we've made over the last few years. So we actually work with companies from seed. So these are really quick, early stage grants, $100,000. We commit to you. You're nominated by an accelerator because we have a network of about 53 accelerators that we're working with. The accelerator nominates the firm applies, and we move from kind of that initial application to when you receive the check in less than 7 weeks. And that's really important and was really helpful for us in our ambition to grow more women-led firms at SDTC. We also have the funding that we've had for many years, which is a startup funding that we have. So this is for companies with larger projects. So someone was asking earlier about what if they need kind of $1 to $2 million. So we'll fund projects. 1 million investment from us would be about a $3 million project. But I'm happy to chat more. If people have questions, you can shoot me a note and we can follow up with you. And we're also doing more scale up support. So this is people that are in the early commercialization stages, starting to generate revenue, not quite generating significant profits at this point, but just kind of in those revenue stages. And we're happy to work with them and also work very closely with EDC and BDC in helping to transition firms. So, what we like to say is we're here to support companies from seed through to success. We have a portfolio of almost 500 companies. We work across every sector. We're just looking for firms that will deliver an environmental benefit. So very much the folks in the audience today. And I think the one thing is we know there's work to do to grow the number of women-led entrepreneurs. And a couple of years ago, we actually did some market research just to understand clean tech entrepreneurship more broadly in Canada. And, that led to the development of the seed fund. And, while it's not 50-50, we've certainly started to see some success in about 1 in 4 of the successful applicants are women, but it's early days, so we'll continue to improve those metrics. And then, we have a small team, but augmented substantially by the great partners that we work with all across Canada. So I'm really excited to kind of open it up to your questions, because I think the work that each of you are doing today has never been more relevant. So I'd love the opportunity to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you so much, Zoe. There is a quick question that I think is really worthwhile making clear for everyone. And that is, they're asking, is there funding right now? And I think there's a difference between the way you run now and when you did before, when you had specific calls. Can you just speak on your continuous intake?
Yeah, and I saw that question earlier. I wasn't sure if it was directed to NRC IRAP. So yes, we are open all year round. So the way it works with the seed fund, though, we do specific funding rounds. So we've just opened our most recent round, and it looks like they kind of happen, from when we open a round to when we close it. Then there's usually about a month break. So we've just closed our last round of this fiscal year, and then we'll open our next round in May. And so for the seed fund, that's where you partner with an accelerator. So it's actually the accelerator that we reach out to. They nominate the firm, because we know those supports are really critical in the early stages of development. But in terms of our other funding programs, they're open all year round. We're on a continuous intake. We have a multi-step application process. So you come to us, someone calls you, you have a conversation. If it seems like it's a good fit, you're invited to do a video pitch. And from there, you'd be invited to do a detailed proposal. And so we're fortunate. We just received exciting news before Christmas that will be recapitalized. So that means an additional $750 million to roll up our sleeves and continue to do more work with many entrepreneurs across Canada.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's really important to hear. As we have one more organization to hear from, I'm going to say merci beaucoup. Thanks so much, Zoe. It's great to hear from SDTC and to see you. And I'm going to steal your quote now. I'm going to call my daughter's future CEOs as well. Hopefully they live up to it.
The only way to describe it.
Hopefully they live up to it. And I'm gonna say thanks and introduce our next speaker. Last but definitely not least, I'm going to invite Nigel Neal, our Consul and Senior Trade Commissioner from the TCS, to come on up, because the TCS has been talked about, you've sponsored this, and we'd like you to come off mute so we can hear all the wonderful things you can say to our audience. Thank you.
All right, bonjour, merci beaucoup, Carol-Anne. It is my pleasure to be here to position the Trade Commissioner Service within the continuum of all these great federal clean tech partners you've heard from. These are the services available to you, our women clean tech founders. So you'll see us on the far right. So while we may be the last and the smallest little chevron on the slide, our mandate is to help export and market ready Canadian businesses navigate risk and uncertainty in order to springboard and grow into international markets. So my current role right now is Senior Trade Commissioner at the Consulate General of Canada in New York. I am part of a global network of 160 offices around the world, essentially offering the same services. And what are those services? So we help with market entry strategy. We make bespoke introductions to partners and opportunities, whether they be access to capital, R&D partnerships, sales channels, et cetera. And we also help resolve complex business problems, given that we are on the ground. Clearly, this has been never more important than now. So our companies, and certainly our women-led companies, everyone needs help. And we, the Trade Commissioner Service, we have responded to this imperative by pivoting incredibly quickly and successfully to virtual program delivery. So the one silver lining, I would say, because you need to stay positive, is this has allowed us to bring more clients into our networks and into our markets. So we are, in effect, able to help more Canadian businesses through this time. So I'm very, very proud of that. Now, we know that women entrepreneurs are, of course, a critical part of Canada's clean tech future, and you heard that from Minister Ng earlier today. Our commitment and my commitment for my team is to bring more women-led and diverse-led founders into our programming. So how do we do that? With intent. Across the board, we engage with a huge number of federal, provincial, and municipal partners, with national and regional businesswomen's associations. We have the Businesswomen in Trade program run out of the TCS, BWIT, as you likely know. And of course, with the wide breadth of inclusive trade organizations and associations across Canada. So with that as a backdrop, I want to give you 4 examples, if I have time, of how we do this here in New York. First, we run our flagship Canadian Technology Accelerator program called the CTA in climate tech. And we've rebranded that to keep up with changes in terminology and, of course, where the Biden administration is going in the sector. The CTA helps high potential Canadian startups grow their business by connecting them to our rich in-person networks of expert mentors and coaches, as well as potential customers, partners, and investors. We typically receive up to 70 applicants, and to select, we have a panel of active US climate tech VCs on our selection committee. Our last CTA, which wrapped up in December, this was our 9th, we had 13 companies, and 38% were female-led founders, and 23% were female BIPOC-led founders. This is a 7-fold increase in the number of female founders we've had over the last 6 years, which is good, but there is clearly a lot more work that we want to do. So this cohort comes to New York, to San Francisco, to Boston, and to Denver, a real cross-country program. And what I like to see is the multiplier effect, multiplier of value that we give to our Canadian companies. Second, we run a number of boot camps. We call them 48 hours because they're 2 days. Traditionally, these were in person, but we're stretching them out virtually. Again, one of the benefits of the virtual environment is we can do a lot more over more time. So some examples here, we have the Women in Clean Tech program that was run out of our office in Palo Alto. And then, of course, the Women in Clean Tech cohort, which is part of the challenge that you've heard of earlier. And a shout out, I understand Amanda Hall from Nanotech is there. We will be seeing her virtually and the rest of the cohort in March. And that is a program that we run between our office here and also in San Francisco. One example how we operate as a federal family, we're working with our friends at SDTC right now on a pilot boot camp for earlier stage companies selected from SDTC's new seed fund, and specifically those with potential for the New York market. Third, we've prioritized the carbon tech vertical, given its market potential of over $1 trillion. We founded, or a founding member of the Carbon to Value initiative, which includes a carbon tech accelerator with a first cohort starting in May. Lastly, we are running at the consulate our 3rd Women in Business conference on March 11th. We have keynotes from Jane Fraser, the incoming CEO of Citibank, and Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, and I will ensure that everyone on this call gets an invite. So very quickly to close, a nod, we have a domestic presence of the TCS in our regional offices. They are our in Canada network, and they are there to help you assess your potential for specific international markets. So we have a lot of federal people, federal organizations, all committed to helping you gain traction and start exporting internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Nigel. That is super helpful. And I am sad to say that now all we have time left is to pass it over to Rosalind. Our closing remarks are going to be from our Director General from the TCS. And so we've been fortunate to get to open with the Minister and to close with Rosalind. I invite you to come up on the screen, take your mute button off, and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Carol-Anne. It's been such a pleasure. Hi, everyone. Bonjour à tous. My goodness, what an excellent conversation today. It's my pleasure to participate in today's Cleantech workshop in advancing women's leadership in Cleantech. Of course, you heard from Nigel about the Trade Commissioner Service, and thank you to everybody, particularly our panelists, for your feedback. And of course, we're there to work with you every step of the way. The Trade Commissioner Service is so pleased to organize today's workshop to assist Canadian companies with their export goals. As mentioned, we heard from the Honorable Mary Ng today, the Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade, who opened the workshop, followed by a stellar roster of panelists whose messages is still kind of floating in my mind and resonating in so many ways. And so, you know, it's been quite a valuable participation from my perspective to be able to hear all of those super helpful and insightful comments. Let me just take a minute just to thank our wonderful moderator who took us through the last 2 hours with key questions and good exercises to make us think through what exactly we want to get out of this workshop today. And what valuable insights can we draw from each and every one of the people who spoke today, including you, Carol-Anne. And thank you to you and the Globe Series team for leading us through this excellent discussion on the topic, this very important topic. And then hearing from our women exporters today, it's no surprise that I believe Canada is a global leader for clean technologies and solutions. It's evident that we have a role to play and to help to meet the growing needs of energy for a transition and to help the world to transition to a low carbon economy. We've heard also today in today's discussions that there is truly an underrepresentation of women entrepreneurs in Canada's clean tech sector. And, you know, we know this affects our competitiveness and the full potential that we have to tackle the world's toughest problems of fighting climate change and moving to a carbon neutral world. So I am so pleased to be able to hear some of the comments. And you know, I heard, for example, Sherry mentioned that of the 30 companies that BDC is assisting with their clean tech fund, only 2 of them are women-led at the CEO level. But I was very encouraged to hear that organizations on our panels are taking measures to increase this ratio and support the growth of women in clean tech. And that was a very astute question from Grace during one of our question periods. So we're seeing a positive trend toward more women in business and clean tech, and this is so greatly welcomed. So from when we're embracing diversity, we've also seen that firms experience an increase in innovation, and you know, our women CEOs are all exemplifications of this, and innovations and creative thinking, and hopefully resulting in higher economic outcomes or greater economic outcomes. But we do know also that that's one element of the equation. Diversity in trade can also help to make sure we have an inclusive society. And you know, some of the examples about how, you know, we stand up for our values and what we believe in, but then at the same time taking into consideration what's a good business decision to each and every one of us individually may be different. And so a workshop like this, of course, would not have been possible without our panelists. So if I could just take a moment to thank Miriam Turek from Clear Blue Technologies, Amanda Hall from Summit Nanotech, Karen Schwitt from Livestock Water Recycling for having shared their inspiring stories. From the three panelists, I kind of got one resounding message: be bold and be proud of the diversity found within your firm and within yourselves. While it's necessary to balance the kind of the local conditions and culture and respect them, being genuine to yourself and your firm is also important and key. And that certainly means that sometimes being the only woman in the room and being the only woman in the room with the red dress is what it takes. And so just be proud of that. And then I like to say thank you to Sarah Applebaum from Pangea, Jill Earthy from Women's Enterprise Center, Sophie Dumoulin from EDC, and Sherry Corbett from BDC for providing excellent panel on accessing financing for clean tech. Because I know from the beginning when we had the question set, financing was one of the key areas of interest. And then a key message from that panel that resonated with me is the importance of being realistic when going about acquiring financing and having a clear funding plan and pathway. And as Jill said, being risk astute and at all stages, whether you're in pre-commercial or in later stages. And finally, allow me to recognize Zoe Colbrook from Sustainable Development Technology Canada, Gemma Irwin from the Clean Growth Hub, and Ching Yu from NRC IRAP, and our own Nigel Neal from the Trade Commissioner Service for the discussions today. As you can see, there are numerous programs and services that companies can leverage in your expert journey. And I'd like to express my appreciation for the partners who will participate in the B2B or the B2G session following the workshop. We all look forward to connecting with you. And I've taken a lot of notes today to help me in my work, but hopefully you have taken some notes as well to help you in your expert journey. And in closing, thank you very much to everybody for your participation in the workshop. Merci beaucoup à tous d'avoir participé à l'atelier aujourd'hui. Merci à vous, Caroline, aussi.
Ce fut énormément mon plaisir personnel. Thank you for all of that. And thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to the TCS and for the audience. Thank you for being with us for 2 hours. We know this is not always easy on video. And we really appreciate all your input, your questions, your participation. We will be posting this on the Globe Series YouTube so that you can come back for more to listen and to extract the resources. And we will let everyone who's in the matchmaking session to move on to that. And I'll wish you all a very good day. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.